Just need one more for quorum, and then we'll be good to go.
Morning, it's Councillor Ainsley checking in. I'm just having a bit of trouble with my video.
Good morning, Councillor Ainsley. Thank you for confirming.
Can members participating online please turn their cameras on to be counted for quorum?
Good morning, Cooper. We just want to check your video and your audio, please.
Hi, good morning. Can you folks hear me?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
So, Councillor Ainsley, are you still not able to turn your camera on? Still having difficulty? Because I think if you were able to turn your camera on, we would actually have quorum.
Morning, Chair. I'm having some audio visual issues with my iPad and the camera.
My apologies, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We did do a quorum check last week, and there was some confirmation from members, but we seem to be having some problems now with quorum. But if one more person joins us, we will have quorum. And according to the bylaws, we have 30 minutes. So technically 15 minutes more. It's 1:45 right now. Okay?
Good morning, Councillor Ainsley. Are you still having issues with your camera?
Yes, I am. It's Councillor Ainsley. Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to count Councillor Ainsley as quorum. So I'm going to start the meeting. We'll get your vote verbally, Councillor Ainsley. So I'll begin. So good morning. My name is Councillor Chris Moyes. I'm the chair of the Two-Spirited Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer Advisory Committee. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you to the fourth meeting of the term. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I will call the meeting to order. This meeting is being held by a hybrid meeting in Committee Room 1 at City Hall, and also using the city's WebEx technology, with members and staff connecting by video conference or calling in. We ask for your patience with any delays and technical issues. Members of the public are welcome to attend this meeting in person or can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. A few reminders. Members, please keep your video on and your mic muted. If members wish to ask questions of staff or to speak, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate your intention to speak, and I will create a speakers list. When voting on an item or a motion, I would also ask members to raise your hand to indicate your vote. If there's a recorded vote, you will be asked to state if you are in favor or opposed. Members, I want to remind you that although we are participating remotely, we must still submit your motions in writing. The clerk's staff are available at 2slgbtq@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although some of us are in different locations and meeting remotely today, the 2SLGBTQ Advisory Committee acknowledges the land we are meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live on this land. We recognize the historical and present-day traumas inflicted upon Indigenous peoples. We stand with communities and families as they mourn the loss of loved ones who were sent to residential schools and never returned. We also acknowledge our complicity in ongoing colonial violence. We commit to supporting the efforts of Indigenous groups towards reconciliation and action-oriented practices, including the equitable use of resources. We strive to learn Indigenous histories and collaborate with communities and families so we can create safe spaces that honor Indigenous cultures and ensure that Indigenous perspectives are present in our work and practices. As a Caribbean Canadian, I'm committed to continue acting in solidarity with our African, Caribbean, and Black communities seeking freedom and reproductive justice in light of the history of ongoing legacy of slavery that continues to impact our communities across Canada. As part of this commitment, I would also like to acknowledge that not all people came to these lands as migrants and settlers. Specifically, I wish to acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. In support of the City of Toronto's ongoing efforts to confront anti-Black racism, I pay tribute to those ancestors of African, Caribbean, and Black origin descent. I will now call for declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act If you would like to declare an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic to let me know and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Seeing none. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the 2S LGBTQ+ Advisory Committee on October 15, 2024? Talon, going to move that item? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. There is one new item of new business, to add to the agenda. It is a letter from the City Clerk's Office regarding a vacancy on the 2S LGBTQ+ Advisory Committee. I will move to add this to the agenda. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So the first item is QS 6.1. It's a work plan development for 2023 to 2026. Kara Santoki, manager, and Nat Rambold, gender equity consultant from the Gender Equity Unit, People and Equity, will give a presentation on work plan development for 2023 to 2026. Go ahead, Kara, sorry.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kara Santoki. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the manager of the Gender Equity Unit, also program staff for this 2S LGBTQ+ Council Advisory Committee. I'd like to offer my apologies to the chair for not being there in person. I live north of Toronto and I'm still completely snowed in, and I wasn't able to get out of my driveway or road today. So I apologize to everybody for that. I'll ask, I see the IT staff has given me sharing. Perfect. So just to give members a background of where we've come to with the work plan process, you may remember that last year staff introduced a work plan process, and at the time, based on a discussion among committee members, we brought forward a revised list of 6 priority areas. So we had brought quite a long list to the 2S LGBTQ+ Council Advisory Committee. Last year, based on that discussion, we revised the list with the committee's approval to housing and shelters, public health with a focus on mental health, employment, social supports and poverty reduction, community safety, newcomers and settlement support, and seniors in long-term care. The next step in that process, again taking place over the course of 2024, was that staff from these various divisions were invited to present to the committee in order to give an overview of their work, to solicit some feedback from committee members, and as well as to allow committee members an opportunity for discussion to discuss the relevance for 2S LGBTQ+ community members. So these were, once again, seniors in long-term care, housing and shelters, employment, social supports and poverty reduction, newcomers and settlement services, public health with a focus on mental health, and community safety. Based on all of these presentations and discussions, the questions asked of staff, and interest amongst 2S LGBTQ+ Council Advisory Committee members, staff have whittled this down to a list of 3 proposed top priority areas. So these are poverty reduction, shelters and housing, and newcomers and refugees. Now, our purpose here as program staff in bringing this proposed final list of 3 for consideration over the remaining term of the committee, based on approval from committee members, is that we will invite staff from these divisions to come back to the committee and offer an opportunity for a more in-depth discussion, a working session perhaps with committee members on ways that the city can strengthen and improve relevant policies, programs, and services as they relate to 2S LGBTQ+ residents and communities. To kick off the discussion amongst committee members, 2 questions. Do these top 3 identified priorities, so once again, poverty reduction, shelters and housing, and newcomers and refugees, Do these top 3 identified priorities align, in your opinion, with the needs of 2S LGBTQ plus communities in Toronto? Or are there any changes you would suggest to these top 3 priority areas? And with that, through the chair, I'll open it up for discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Kara. Any questions, for staff or suggestions? Go ahead, Terrence, and then Ranjit.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I was just looking at the list and options, and I was thinking it works and it makes sense. I'm wondering if there is intention to integrate some of the pieces of the 6 that we had revised into the 3. For example, we could possibly put employment and social supports and poverty reduction. Oh no, sorry, it's under there. Sorry, you have my brain fart. Poverty reduction. Is that including employment, social supports? And then another one was like mental health, say, could be integrated in all 3 categories, or things like that, where like there is an overlap or intersecting experience within those 3, based off of the original 6 that we had.
Absolutely. And if you have any specific suggestions along those lines, please feel free to share it. So, for example, mental health integrated into all 3 categories. That's really useful feedback that, you can just send to us, and we'll make sure we try to do our best to address it.
Then I would definitely recommend that point.
Okay, noted.
Let's note that for sure.
All noted.
Okay, Ranjit.
I think Pink Angel is next. Pink Angel, after you, I'll speak after you.
Sorry, Pink Angel, I didn't see your hand. Pink Angel, you want to go?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So if we can clarify what housing means, I think shelter is fairly obvious. And then also clarification for newcomers and refugees, like what does that cover specifically or more generally? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll try my best to address your question, Pink Angel. And if I haven't quite covered it, we couldn't go back to staff from those relevant divisions. So just to jog everyone's memory, we had staff both from shelters present to the committee on ways in which they're trying to improve provision of services for 2S LGBTQ plus residents, as well as staff from the Housing Secretariat. Now that's more related to city programs on housing, as opposed to shelter services, emergency shelter services. So the Housing Secretariat looks at buildings, they implement the Housing TO Action Plan. They're concerned with things like affordable housing. So that's the difference. Now, these 2 divisions work very closely together. For newcomers and refugees, so we had staff, again, to jog everyone's memory, staff came from SVFA, and they do have a unit within that division that works directly on policies related to newcomers and refugees coming into Toronto. So they did a presentation on ways in which they're trying to help 2S LGBTQ plus residents through their programs. Does that answer your question?
So housing means affordable housing. Am I correct?
I would say it means housing in general and affordable housing in particular.
Right. And so when it's affordable housing, can you give me some metrics on what affordable housing means?
I can, for the benefit of this committee, re-invite our colleagues from the Housing Secretariat to provide some metrics on perhaps progress on the Housing TO Action Plan, as well as future streams of work.
Right. And excuse me, for newcomers and refugees, what are any the specifics regarding their supports besides, let's say, shelters?
So once again, Pink Angel, I apologize. I'm not able to give you metrics
Okay.
but I can, again, to follow up on your question, we can follow up with staff from that division specifically. If you're interested in metrics on supports that have been given to us LGBTQ plus residents so far, if this is of interest as a work plan item for the committee, we can ask staff to come back to address some of those issues directly.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Ranjit, go ahead.
Thank you. My suggestion is, question and a suggestion is, under these three priorities, where are two-spirit people within? Because we read the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement and we live on the stolen lands of Indigenous peoples, including myself as a settler. I think that one of the priorities should be specifically on two-spirit peoples. Their mental health and well-being, housing, you name it, everything that sustain their Indigenous worldviews, values, connection to communities, spiritualities, and so on. So I propose number one priority to be, let's start with First Peoples, and in this particular committee, it is two-spirit people. And that's how we name our committee, begin with two-spirit. So action time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. We can absolutely, as we go back to staff and divisions, to ask them to think about and work on these priority areas, is to put two-spirited people as a top priority if this is what the committee requests.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. So putting my public health hat on, you know, housing and poverty are social determinants of health. So when we talk about, and I don't want to put this in order of importance because then it diminishes things a little bit. But when you refer to poverty reduction, are you talking about food security or insecurity specifically?
So based on the discussions from committee members over the meetings when staff presented, it was actually pretty broad, so poverty in general. But to your point, Chair, as we came back as staff to consider that, we actually did start to think about food security and contacted staff working on food security. But this, you know, I would say the list is not exhaustive and it's not set in stone. This is here for committee members to discuss, and if they want to change it, that's at the discretion of the committee.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, for me, I also believe that, you know, shelter really is a priority, right? I mean, once people have shelter, then, you know, they could hopefully eat properly, sleep properly, take the medications, you know, visit their doctors, so on and so forth. So, and I know the city itself, even through this past budget, you know, we've invested and we continue to invest in shelter and housing, and more specifically, permanent housing. So I just want to think out loud here. So based on our own strategies of the city, how are we going to advocate and align for this? Because we want to carve out, I guess, the 2S LGBTQ plus portion of this. So how do we carve this out and make sure that we're part of the broader discussion at the city?
I'm not sure I completely follow your question. I apologize, Chair. When you say carve it out, do you mean from a policy perspective or at a general level in terms of the city?
The city has its own policies around extending the shelter and the housing portion, right? But I'm saying that, like, you know, this advisory committee is focusing on, you know, the 2S LGBTQ folks, right? So how do we make space in city policy for this? Or is that what we're talking about here, I guess?
Both, actually. So, for the purposes of this committee, in order to create that space, so have that voice represented, this is why we want to make a manageable work plan, but we will ask staff from the relevant divisions based on what's decided today to come back in order to re-engage this committee to achieve exactly that.
Okay. All right. It's just for my own understanding, because
Yeah. So to have that towards LGBTQ plus input, which is the role of this committee, we do need to execute that through the relevant divisions. So based on what are the priorities identified today after members vote, we will ask those divisions to come back.
And to Pink Angel's point, I mean, newcomers and refugees is very broad, right? So I'm still not quite clear on that, because if we look at newcomers and refugees, are we talking about shelter and housing for them, or is it, you know, reducing their poverty? You know, I mean.
Yeah, which means it may be intersecting with another category. Now, if this committee would prefer to take off newcomers and refugees, which we suggested as staff based on the discussions over the meetings and the level of engagement from the committee, it may be that perhaps another category seems more salient for the committee members, which may be mental health or maybe one of the other categories.
I mean, for me, for example, I think community safety would be a priority. We still have issues, especially with what's happening down south and across the globe, and people coming here asking for refuge because of their safety. I'm just wondering if that should be something that we should consider, maybe being a third category here. Because I know from my own experience as the local councillor in Toronto Centre, we still have a lot of transphobia and homophobia and people who are harmed in Toronto still. My experience working in the hospital for 22 years, a lot of the clients that I saw, you know, were physically harmed by members of the public. So it is still a very important and pressing issue. And I think that's something that should be listed here as one of the top 3 priorities. I mean, again, I know I'm an elected official in this seat, chairing this committee, and I probably should not, you know, I don't want to dominate the conversation, the discussion. That's not my role here, but I just want to put that out there.
You know, in response to that, Chair, from the perspective of program staff, and I'll open it up to the committee, from the perspective of program staff, we're happy to make any changes that the committee would like. So for example, you know, putting community safety, that's fine. I will leave that to the discretion of this committee.
I saw Maisha and then Terrence have their hands up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I do think these 3 priorities do align with the community based off of like the experience and the work that I'm doing. I don't have any changes. I do wonder what you said earlier about maybe narrowing down on what poverty reduction really looks like. I'm wondering if that would actually be helpful for the committee and the team, because I think when I'm thinking of poverty reduction, like one of the main things is food insecurity, but also providing more employment, training, and opportunities for the community, because I think there's a big lack of that. There certainly are organizations that are working on supports for the 2S LGBT community, but I don't think there's quite enough support for like the growing need that exists in the community. So I can't recall if past meetings we like how narrow we got, but yeah, maybe something to think about for all of us.
Thanks. Terrence?
3 quick things. One, first of all, the newcomers refugee category previously was listed actually as newcomers and settlement supports. So maybe the intentionality more specific previously to that was looking at settlement supports, not as the broad newcomer refugee population. Not too sure if that is or if how we want to narrow it down, but putting that there for folks to discuss. Second point was definitely agree with the community safety piece, and I was thinking that that could be another intention or intersectionality in regards to the different pieces that we're working on. looking at integrating, just like with mental health, also integrating community safety into the planning of each of those pieces. And then the third point I wanted to put is I'm trying to figure out how we can look at seniors in long-term care, because that population should not be forgotten at all. They are elders. We wouldn't be here where we are now without their fight before us, and they need our support too. So I'm wondering if people can think of an integration within these three, or do we create a fourth, my bad, point in regards to the work plan?
Okay. I see Kara's paying very close attention.
I am, and a few members have their hands up, so I'm just pausing to listen.
Okay, sorry. Who else? Go ahead, Talon.
Hello, and my name is pronounced Talene.
Talene,
but
sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
My apologies.
No worries. Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Chair. I wanted to add to the discussion with regard to the top three options. I feel like I guess I thought that the intention was to narrow our focus into like top three from the past six that we had decided. But let me know if I'm wrong there. But with regard to the three of like newcomer support, of like there was community safety that was mentioned. I like the idea of incorporating mental health. For me, I think community safety is part mental health, part community engagement / education. And I think within that education and engagement piece, there is like a connection to seniors, which might be supportive. Maybe if like the idea with regard to supporting seniors is like long-term care and like caregivers and like those sorts of supports, maybe that could be added to like housing and like that sort of connection. But I open it up to y'all if you're interested or if you have any thoughts or ideas there.
Okay, thank you, Talon. Any thoughts on that? In regards to seniors and long-term care, I also want to add one of the organizations I'm working with is the Rakai Center. They have a Rainbow Room wing, actually, at Sherburne and Wellesley. And they have a second location opening at the Canary District. I just had a shovel in the ground a few weeks ago. And there too, they'll have a rainbow wing as well. So again, I think it's important it's a start, but you know, more needs to be done. And I think this advisory committee can definitely encourage more of those spaces to open up across the city. Sorry? Oh, okay. Sorry. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Any other person want to speak on this item? Pink Angel, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I concur with Member Ranjit that two-spirited individuals must be prominently and prioritized in our discussions. And I also would like to thank the Chair for mentioning that housing is critical. And I wrote to the Human Rights Commissioner back in 2020 that, and I mentioned specifically that without housing, it all falls apart. So thank you, Chair, for highlighting that. And I wrote to the Human Rights Commissioner in Ottawa that without housing, it's not going to work. And then I gave her about 15 different solutions to the housing crisis. And she said to me, she responded back to me saying she's going to appoint a housing advocate. and she will pass on those suggestions to the housing advocate. And so the Human Rights Commissioner did do that, and then my suggestions were passed on to the housing commissioner, the housing advocate rather, and then she responded back to me thanking me for the suggestions. And today what we see are many of the suggestions that I had made to the housing advocate being come to realization. And so what I would like to suggest is one of the ones that I mentioned very specifically is to, and this is going to be a big ask, is to cede lands to First Nations developers to build housing very quickly, bypassing the NIMBYism issue, and also to give them funding. The federal government gave them billions to these Indigenous developers, and that's in line with the Truth and Reconciliation 91 recommendations that this happens. So maybe we can consider doing some of that here in Toronto for specifically 2S persons and non-binary Native Indigenous persons for that. So I would like to have that consideration taken in when we're dealing with housing for two-spirited and non-binary Indigenous persons in our discussions, because I can send you all this information to you, Kara, regarding these communications and all these developers who are building housing very, very quickly, rapidly. I'm talking multiple housing and very low car use, walking distance work and all amenities. Public transit comes right to the door of those housing units, and they're like tall, they're 30, 40 stories high. So this is an immense opportunity for us to consider this sort of thing. And Kara, I can send you all this information if you're willing to look at it. And also like to Talin's idea of including seniors in long-term care homes. I work with the City of Toronto on the Senior Services Long-Term Care Community Education Series for the last 3 years. I was part of the Leading and Learning of Pride Toolkit with Joseph Burley, the manager, the previous manager, and I've been doing education in the 10 long-term care City of Toronto run homes. So there's that I've been doing, but as Talin said, we should there's much more work to do. And as the chair himself said, there is more work to do regarding Rainbow Seniors in long-term care homes. And I also wrote to the manager of Senior Services Long-Term Care to expand this across Toronto, but apparently that's not, part of the city's mission, apparently. So there's that. But anyway, thank you for listening. Those are my suggestions for housing, particularly for two-spirited and non-binary Indigenous persons. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pink Angel. I saw Cooper had their hands up. You're on mute. There we go.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. Just going back to Terrence's point, I'm just wondering if there any possibility for us to contemplate a fourth pathway. I'm just thinking about mental health and also well-being. I think those two go hand in hand. Just wondering if there's any way for us to think about what that could look like. I think it's just while it intersects with the other themes that we're exploring. I think that should be a separate intervention in and of itself, whether that's accessing mental health services, peer support, developing healthy coping mechanisms. I think that should be an intervention that stands alone. So that's just my thoughts around mental health, not just mental health, but also helping people to thrive. People who identify as part of the communities that we're here discussing this morning. But I'm just wondering, but something for the city to think about while they go back and calculate their efforts. How do we center mental health and well-being as a top priority instead of cramming it into these different areas? I feel like it will just easily get lost and won't come off as a priority. And I think for communities to thrive, before we can think of housing, community safety, we have to think about our health and well-being for how we're, providing people with those tools and support. So that's my comment, suggestions this morning.
Thank you, Cooper. I'm happy that we're talking about these issues today. I mean, I chair public health, and now I actually chair the advisory committee of Our Health, Our City, which I haven't actually had my first meeting yet. I think it's coming up soon. But we'll be talking about, with community members like yourselves and others, about the mental health and the addiction piece in our city. So, and hopefully that advisory committee will help us going forward to address some of the issues you're talking about. So there's some overlap here in what you're talking about in other tables that I'm sitting at anyway. Go ahead, Pink Angel.
Thank you, Chair. So just very briefly, I think it's important to be inclusive of the community and their needs and not narrow it down. The narrower it is, the less people you protect. For example, I myself personally was assaulted not even 2 weeks ago at a pizza close to where I live, Vaughan Road in St. Clair. And I had to defend myself physically from 4 white youth, 15 to 18, I guess, somewhere around there. And they were all taller than me. And previously also assaulted on the subway at Ossington Station. And I filed a police report. I have the video. So this is real. This is not some theoretical notion. It happens to people like me, particularly trans women of color. So we have to also address that with the TTC and with the Toronto Police, that enforcement needs to be more robust. Because when I filed the police report, guess what happened? Nothing. Because the TTC operator let the perpetrator leave the station. When the Toronto Police Services came, they took down the report, asked me whether I wanted charges laid. I said yes. Nothing happened. So it's not unusual for us to experience that, even as Black persons. We are not treated equally. So, for example, if a white person was assaulted, I'm sure the outcome would have been different. I can guarantee you that. But if it's brown people, trans folks, even two-spirited and non-binary Indigenous persons or Indigenous persons, were not included.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you, Pink Angel. As I mentioned earlier, community safety is and should be part of our priority lists. So just based on your experience alone, I've heard this time and time again across the city from various people. So Go ahead, Talim.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask Kara, like with regard to the three like top priorities, was the intention to like narrow it down from the 6 that we had previously agreed on? Because I'm like hearing from the chair, or like, well, the partially from the chair and partially from the committee that there are many different and sort of intersecting like issues within our communities, and I think we're having a difficult time like picking 3, and I wonder if it's like if that is something that we can do. Like I've been noting down some of the things that have been coming up, and I can see like there are like 3 different like community members or like groups within our community that we're looking at, like newcomers, trans women, two-spirited people, or trans women of color, I should say. And then there's also like community safety, mental health, housing, food security. And I do not feel comfortable personally like ranking them, like choosing which 3 should be in and which 3 should, or like what others should be out. And I don't think anyone else is super comfortable with that either. And I'm wondering, like, because with narrowing things down or trying to connect them together, I feel like that kind of waters down the concept of like each individual one, because they are all deserving of their own like space, and like they are all very important issues. So yeah, I'm just wondering, like, with regard to like what you're asking of us, like what would set y'all up for success in like creating a really robust work plan.
Talian is a valid point. Sarah, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah. So through the chair, and thank you for the comment. So first of all, in answer to the first part of your question, we acknowledge that the term of this committee is limited. So it's until 2026, and we want to be realistic in terms of getting the issues back, in front of the committee's eyes, based on the number of meetings left in the term and how much we can get staff in front of you. How can we get those divisional staff in front of you to talk about the work that they're doing so that you can give this amazing feedback? That said, it is at the discretion of the committee if you want to expand the list. Now, as program staff, what we would do is try as best as possible for the remainder of the term to bring those divisional staff to you. So based on all that I'm hearing, poverty reduction came up in terms of things like food security and employment with a top. Shelters and housing remains a priority. Mental health is a big priority, community safety, and seniors. So that brings us to 1, 2, 5. Okay, so the intention was, and again, in answer to members' question, was to bring it down from 6. We probably kind of hit on from 6 to 5. That sounds fair to people. And in terms of your comments on the topics versus the group, so particular subsections of residents and bringing an intersectional lens, as staff, what we would suggest is we agree on a broad set of topics. And within those topics, we think about which residents you'd like to bring, more of an intersectional lens to, or in terms of the discussion of the committees, when those divisional staff come, that would be the time to bring up, particular sets of residents.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions of staff on this item. Okay, Ranjit, I thought we were able to escape it. Go ahead, Ranjit.
I have quick follow-up, and Pink Angel, thank you so much for bringing up your very disturbing personal experience to this forum. And while you are living your life, you have to also safeguard and advocate for two-spirit, transgender, non-binary people, and that is that's in a way sad. That's very sad. That's something cisgender or cisgender passing people take for granted, and I want to highlight that. Now, that also has this increasing violence has wider fueling south of the border, what is happening, and also one of our federal political leaders publicly claiming that he only knows about two genders. So these fuel violence, and they escape happily, but their escapism materialize in violence in everyday lives. So this I want to highlight, and we have to take them accountable one way or the other for their irresponsible, ignorant wordings and in such privileged positions, and perhaps they will lead the country. What will happen then? That's one thing. And Kara, thank you so much for your good work. I'm curious to know the next steps, how, in terms of funding for these issues, in terms of how to materialize these actions, priorities, in terms of programs, projects, and so on. Thank you.
Through the chair, and thanks to the member for the question. At this point in time for committee members, I, as program staff, will rely on advice from our colleagues and clerks. Can we create, or do we need a motion to adopt the item based on what we're hearing in terms of discussions from members to 5 topics? So poverty reduction as 1, shelters and housing, number 2, community safety, number 3, mental health, number 4, and seniors and long-term care as number 5. If the committee is in agreement to adopt these as key priorities for the rest of the term of this committee, in answer to the member's question, as program staff, we will take this back to our divisional colleagues and invite them to come back to this committee to speak to these items with you.
So Kara, you're suggesting that, or recommending that we put a motion forth to,
Yes.
Okay, so I'll have the clerk put something together now. Okay? Terrence, go ahead.
Please, please, please don't hate me. I would be remiss without saying no, that piece of the newcomers and refugee, considering the climate, and based on the work that I've done with the community in Rexdale and all that jazz, I'm pretty sure we're going to get, if we haven't already, an influx of Two-Spirit and trans folks coming in from the US. So my concern is that we may not be doing some preventative stuff in regards to like intentionally planning for what it will be in the near future for our city.
My concern, though, Terrence, is that refugee and asylum seekers is a provincial and federal responsibility. What we can control at the city level is, again, the items mentioned, for example, like housing, mental health, even though mental health is really, well, mental health could be a city thing if you actually, figure it out. Even though mental health is provincial. Poverty reduction, those are things that we can actually address at the city level because we have the tools and the resources to deal with it. I think by extension, when refugees and asylum seekers come to Toronto, if we actually have the house and the shelter and the mental health and all those other things that were just listed, then they will be accommodated or welcomed. That's my 2 cents. I mean, feel free to disagree. Kara,
I agree. So maybe it's looking at when we do that planning, we mentioned some other populations and how they integrate into these categories. And when we work with these departments, asking them to put into place some planning ahead of time that would allow for whatever the estimates are in regards to these populations immigrating over from where U.S. primarily or wherever else, but U.S. predicted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. But one of the things, though, I don't see here, maybe that's to me that might have some value is the data collection of all this, right? Because how do we know that we're actually on the right path? We don't have the numbers to prove it. For example, and I hate bringing public health back into this again because that's where I immerse myself in, but one of the issues I'm actually dealing with right now is the supervised consumption sites. And I pulled all division heads into a meeting, I think 2 weeks ago now, including like public health, Toronto Police, paramedic, fire, emergency management, and others, the DCM as well. And one of the things that we've decided is, we will actually continue to collect data as of right now to see where the numbers are at. And after March 31st or April 1st, we'll continue to collect data to see, where the differences are and where the gaps are, and use the data to drive the work that we do, and we could bring that out to the public or to the ministry and to show them, like, we need more supports, or, we need whatever. So I'm just thinking, based on the 5 that we have outlined here, if we can probably put an asterisk saying that, we need to make sure that it's accompanied with some sort of data to show the work that we're doing and the need of it all. Does that make sense? Okay. I think I'm talking too much today, though. It's not my role to do that here. I'm here to listen.
No, I would respond actually to the chair, if I may. When we go back to staff, we can happily communicate that. So to please think about and bring back to this committee any current methods of disaggregated data collection or future planned work.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, seeing no further questions of staff, we'll move to speakers. Any speakers on this item? We've been kind of talking back and forth, I know. I break my own rules here. But I do have the motion, so I'll just have staff put it on the screen. And it reads that the 2 LGBTQ Advisory Committee request the Manager, Gender Equity Unit, People in Equity, amend the revised list of priority issued based on the feedback from the committee. So it reads as follows: 1 through 5, housing and shelters, public health, mental health, employment, social services, and poverty reduction, community safety, and seniors in long-term care. Any discussions on that? Okay, seeing none. So I'll move that item. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. It was a great discussion. Let's move on to item number 2. The next item is QS 6.2, Chapter 510, Holiday Shopping and Tourist Area Exemptions. We have Stephanie Oakes, Policy Development Officer, Economic Development and Culture, and Mariana Mota, Manager, Economic Development and Culture. We'll give a presentation on Chapter 510, Holiday Shopping and Tourist Area Exemptions. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us with you today. I'm Mariana Mota, Manager, Policy and Research in Economic Development and Culture. My pronouns are she and her. And we're here today to talk to you about Chapter 510, Holiday Shopping. I'm joined today by my colleague Stephanie. I'll let her introduce herself, and she's going to take you through this presentation today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Oakes. As Mariana said, I'm a Policy Development Officer with Economic Development and Culture. And my pronouns are she.
Sorry.
I think I just need, pardon me?
One moment.
I do, yeah. I'm just going to get the sharing rights and then I will share it. Yep. Everyone see that? Yeah. Sorry. Great, well, thank you for having us here today. As you can see in the agenda, we're here to present on Chapter 510, which focuses on holiday shopping and tourist area exemptions. So this is an overview of what we're going to cover today. I'm going to start by telling you about the council directive that has led to this work that we're doing. We're going to go a little over the consultation plan and who we're consulting on this topic. I'll then go through the bylaw, so to understand some of the key parts of it. Talk a little bit about past consultations on this topic. And then we have a couple of questions that we're hoping to get all of your feedback on. So this work, it comes from a council directive from 2023. City Council directed city staff to look at this bylaw 510 and assess whether to retain it as is or change the list of the 9 holidays. And I'll get more into detail and tell you all about those in the following slides. The second part is they asked us to look to develop criteria and a process for the designation of tourist area exemptions. And again, I'll explain what that is in upcoming slides. And when noted that the criteria and the process, if it's established, this would create a pathway for retail businesses to apply to open on holidays. Right now, the bylaw stipulates who can open and who needs to remain closed. So this is our consultation plan. Based on this council directive, we are doing public and targeted stakeholder consultations. There are 4 components to our consultation plan. The first is key informant interviews. Those are completed, and we met with a number of different individuals from labor, from business, from tourism, and other groups as well. We are also holding 3 focus groups. We have the first of one today, actually. And again, they're focused on specific groups. So we have one focused on labor and retail workers. We have one focused on business and tourism. And we have one focused on residents and other stakeholders. We also have a virtual town hall. It's this week on February 20th from 6 to 8. That's open to anyone who would like to attend. It's virtual. And the details can be found on the city website if you Google holiday shopping. And the final piece is that we have an online survey that's currently live. Again, anyone can complete this survey. It opened on January 20th and it closes this week on February 20th. And really, we're looking to do all these consultations so that we can gather feedback, and this feedback will inform our staff recommendations in regards to this topic. So now to get a little bit into the bylaw to explain it a bit more. So the holiday shopping bylaw, it tells people that on certain holidays, retail businesses in Toronto are not able to open. And currently many retail businesses, this includes things like shopping centers, grocery stores, medium to large retail stores that might be outside a shopping center, so a standalone clothing store chain, for example, they're required to close on the 9 specified holidays, and you can see them on the screen there. New Year's Day, Family Day, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, Victoria Day, Canada Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day. So that's what the bylaw outlines. Now, within the bylaw, there are some exemptions. The first relates to small businesses, and they have pretty specific criteria around this. So it's around the type of store, the size of the store, the number of employees, and again, the kind of goods and services that they provide. So for example, if you were a small retail business that was less than 2,400 square feet, had no more than 3 people working, and you sold things like tobacco, food stuff, fresh fruits, magazines, books, or antiques, you are allowed to be open on those holidays. The same goes for things like laundromats, gas stations, businesses that do vehicle or boat repair, premises selling prepared meals, so that's restaurants, for example. Pharmacies, again, there's a size component to this that are less than 7,500 square feet. They can also be open. So there are some exemptions to this act based on the small businesses or essential goods and services. And these are only some examples. There's, in Chapter 510, you can see a full list of the exemptions. Now, there's another set of exemptions. These are called the tourist area exemptions. So you may remember that when I was talking about the council directive. And these are 5 areas in Toronto that are allowed to be open on holidays. So these are Queen's Quay, Toronto Eden Centre and the Hudson Bay Company, the downtown Yonge Street Business Improvement Area, the Bloor Yorkville Business Improvement Area, and the Distillery Historic District. So these 5 tourist areas, they were granted exemptions based on a previous legislation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that on the next slide. But one thing to note is in the current city bylaw, there's no formal process to add new tourist area exemptions. So these are the 5 that we have, and there's not currently a process to add any new ones. So for background on the tourist exemptions, so previous to Chapter 510, the city fell under a provincial legislation that was called the Retail Business Holiday Act. And when we were legislated under the previous legislation, the provincial legislation, those 5 tourist areas were granted exemptions. In 2006, the City of Toronto Act came into effect, and that's when Chapter 510 came into effect. And Chapter 510, unlike the provincial legislation, doesn't provide a process or criteria for new tourist areas to be exempted. So that's just some notes around how those previous tourist areas came into effect. So this topic has gone to council on multiple occasions since 2008. And on those previous times it's gone to council, there has been consultations with key stakeholders, such as retail businesses, retail workers, residents, as well as public consultations as well. There was different methods that were used in these consultations, everything from surveys to stakeholder meetings. And so based on these past consultations, and some of our research to date, we do know that there are some kind of key considerations that people bring forward in relation to this bylaw and whether or not there should be changes around it. And so I'm just going to go over some of these just so you can get a bit of an idea of the landscape of what we've heard in regards to this. I do want to say that although we have heard this, we are doing consultations right now because we're looking to update this assessment and make sure, hear if there's been any changes in what people have to say on this topic, and that's why we're doing such a fulsome consultation. So looking to hear your feedback as well. So some of the things that we've heard in the past in regards to the changes to the potential changes to this bylaw is one, that there's a need for a level playing field for retail businesses. As you can see in the bylaw, there's certain businesses that can be open, certain businesses that can be closed based on the different exemptions. There's also differences across municipalities in Ontario. So Toronto has different rules around this comparatively to some of the other areas around us. We've heard that there needs to be clarity in what the regulatory framework is. So what does the bylaw mean, and can we make it more clear? We've heard that we need, this is needed for business to stay competitive on across the year. We've also heard that the holidays are in place because there's a need for retail workers to have a common holiday so that they can spend time with their family and friends, so the retail workers that work in these businesses. We've heard about the potential loss of revenue for different businesses given the different scenarios and that some are open and some are closed. We've heard about needing to recognize Toronto's diversity, and that's again specific to the different businesses, but also the different holidays. And so that's in relation to the different holidays that are there, the 9 holidays. We've heard around needing adequate protections for retail workers. So what protections are in place around these holidays. And then the last piece is if retail workers were to work on these days, are there support services in place such as childcare or transit for them to get to work, or if they have children, for their children to have care while they're at work on those holidays. So these are some of the things that we've heard in our past consultations, and again, looking to get an updated assessment of these. So with that, we bring this to you all. We do have a set of questions that we're looking to engage with all of you on, looking to get your feedback around what do you think about seeing changes to these current holiday closure requirements, for example, in terms of the days or in terms of the types of businesses that would be allowed to be open and closed. Maybe I'll start with the first question and pause there for feedback, and then we can continue with the rest. And of course, if there's any questions, also happy to answer those. So our first question is, would you want to see changes to the current holiday closure requirements?
Thank you. Pink Angel, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation and overview and the bylaws and so on and all the details. But my question is, this is the committee for 2S LGBTQIA+ issues specifically. So how does your discussion relate to us?
That's a good question. Thank you. That's a really good question. So when we were looking at this bylaw, we've looked to see kind of who this topic impacts. And of course, it impacts businesses and it impacts retail workers all across Toronto. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were consulting as widely and as in-depthly as we could with the different groups. So we had conversations with different groups at the city, including the Gender Equity Office, and given the kind of wide impacts of this bylaw, we wanted to come and bring it towards you all. I know it's not necessarily directly related to your mandate, but knowing that you all have such good feedback related to different areas in the city, we wanted to make sure that we provided an opportunity for feedback on this as well.
Yeah, I will also add too, I feel that the current bylaw is discriminatory because if you look at the 5 areas that are allowed to be open on holidays are all affluent areas, right? For example, the Eden Center, the Downtown Young BIA, the Distillery District. But yet, for example, though, the Village, they cannot open, and those businesses that support our community have to close. And if they are open, they'll be charged. I know in my own ward of Toronto Centre, people in the Old Town BIA area, for example, the St. Lawrence Market, they have to close. When really there's a lot of people there come visit the St. Lawrence Market area, and they don't have the same opportunity as those at the Eden Center who have affluent stores that say like, the Winners and, I don't know, what's their Old Navy, right? All those businesses that actually are retail businesses, chain businesses, the majority are American businesses, and they have these exemptions, and our own community does not. So I think actually this motion that you're talking about to come back to the council, I think is my own, because I was so upset about it when I heard about it. Anyways, but that's just for context. I think it does affect our community in a significant way. Anyone else? Talene. One day I'll get your name right. I'm practicing.
No, that was good. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add, with regard to what came up for me here, for folks to consider. I'm not sure necessarily what we are able to change, but like in an ideal world, what I would see changed here would be, well, I guess I was kind of flirting with the idea of like Thanksgiving being like removed because of its clear like colonial history. But then at the same time, that would be something that would most likely most negatively impact the retail workers in like having one less time and a half day, and one less day to like see their friends and family. But yeah, I don't know. I think the idea that there is no way for new businesses to receive like that tourist area exemption is really a shame. Like if there was a way for the village to gain that access, or like I think, well, I guess like Queen Street West, I don't know, it's like a particularly like queer space. I think about like maybe some like community centers. I don't know if they are able to decide or not if they're able to open and close. Those might be spaces that would be supportive for our community to remain open on these days. But yeah, I'm curious what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Pink Angel, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So with regards to the list, it's pretty much all white colonial influenced. That has structurally been so for more than 150 years. So, for example, Black History Month, there's no holiday. There's no holiday for, say, South Asian holidays like Holi, the Spring Festival, and so on, or Diwali, or for the Islamic community like Eid al-Fitr, and so on. So, yes, it is indeed discriminatory on all levels, on all 9 of them, in fact, because it doesn't recognize the diversity of Toronto or even of Ontario. And whoever made the holidays had specifically white Christian folks in mind. And there is no Indigenous holiday, for example. These may be celebrations, Indigenous Day and so on, but it's not a holiday. So there's that. Is the panel willing to consider those communities that are not represented in those holidays? Thank you.
Okay. I mean, honestly, and I hate giving my feedback in the middle of this conversation here, but I think the best thing to do to make it more equitable is actually just to remove these 5 exemption areas and just have it across the board, you know, everybody should be allowed to open if they so choose. And to Pink Angel's point, if, you know, certain segments of the population, you know, be it whatever holiday it is, the business themselves can choose to remain closed. The onus should be on the individuals, not the state saying to them, oh, you have to close. So I think these, yeah, I think people should I think the tourist exemption should be across the city where people should just open if they so choose. That's my 2 cents. Anybody else? Terrence, go ahead.
Totally agree with the blanket. Everybody should be allowed. With the added caveat, what comes to mind is the employee rights, both in regards to, I know a lot of folks that need to work those days because they want that time and a half, right? They need those dollars, whereas other folks may not be able to or want to, so there shouldn't be any repercussions, you know, when your employers go, well, we have to be open, and so if you don't work, you get fired. So I want to make sure that as we're looking at this, yes, blanket, everybody can choose to be open or not, depending on your needs or what you would want to do. So it's definitely, you know, not kind of like, anyways, it's more equitable for everybody, and choice is allowed in there, but there is protections put in place for employees with this new change.
That is an excellent suggestion. Pink Angel, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Chair, I would like to concur with you that yes, you speak, but it's for they are very valuable contributions, rational, logical, and needed. So, and you have the freedom of speech, and so I encourage you to speak. Because I think you offer valuable input, and you should not reduce any of your or restrict your voice. It's important that you speak, and we appreciate your comments for the most part. I don't see any pushback on that, so I think you offer valuable input. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate your feedback there. Anyone else wants to comment? I'm seeing Ranjit, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with everything. In case of there are limitations about the closure, I would suggest that identify businesses run by Two-Spirit, trans and queer people, as LGBTQ plus people, businesses, and give them the exemption, prioritize exemptions from an equity basis. That is important, just in case if there are restrictions of letting the businesses choose their the options to open or not. The other factor Clarence also highlighted is the payments. A lot of the frontline staff, waiting staff are as LGBTQ plus also identified. So how are they treated, paid, given the option to work or not? Those are important factors to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you're in alignment with Terrence as well, based on your comments. Thank you so much. Seeing no further questions or comments, I think we're all on the same page here. We'll go to speakers. Any speakers on this item? I'll just say thank you to for contributing and for letting us know how you feel about this item. I think we're all in alignment, and I hope the feedback you take back will reflect that.
Yes, thank you for the feedback, the thoughtful feedback you've all shared. I just want to share the last slide as well, just to remind individuals that there is an opportunity still to provide additional feedback. So if you are thinking about this and you have more thoughts later, feel free to fill out one of our online surveys. Again, you can find it on the city website. If you Google holiday shopping in Google, it will come up. If you have others within the communities and networks that you're part of that you think would like to share their feedback, please share it broadly with them as well. The survey closes on February 20th. And of course, you're all welcome to attend the virtual town hall this week as well. And if those two options don't work for you as well, you can also email me directly. Happy to receive feedback from whoever on this topic. And thanks again for all your thoughtful feedback.
Thank you. And also too, I hope, and to the members here, feel free to share that information with your network.
Yes.
But I also hope too that you're sharing that information with the BIAs as well across the city.
Yes, it's been shared with the BIAs.
Okay, wonderful. I will move that item for receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We do have one more item. This letter was sent forth by Jabber, but Jab could not be here today. I'll just share that he had a friend who was on that jet yesterday that crashed at Pearson Airport, so this is why he's not here today. So because this is their item, I'm going to defer it to the next meeting. All those in favor of deferral? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And our vice chair.
There's one more item.
Sorry?
There's one more item.
Oh. What was the other item? I'm not following my script. Oh, yes. There's a letter from city clerks for information to inform that am I supposed to pronounce that? Huh? A has resigned from the Two-Spirit, from our committee, effective February 4th, 2025. We would like to thank A for their contributions to the committee. Can I have a motion to receive this item? Councillor Ainsley, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And we'll work with staff to recruit to find a replacement. Sorry, 1 second. I'm going to ask for a motion to excuse Jabber from today's meeting. Do you have a motion for that? Sorry. Okay, I could just say it. Okay. I'll move a motion to excuse Jabber. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And our vice chair, Mark, I also like to have a motion to excuse him from this meeting and the following meeting for health reasons. For each meeting? Okay, he advised me that he won't be here next meeting either. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move a motion to excuse Mark Toffoli, wishing him a speedy recovery and treatment. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And that concludes our meeting for today. Thank you, everyone. It was actually a great meeting. Everyone contributed. I think, the conversation was pretty great. Anyways, have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Meeting adjourned. Bye.